So this little video is all about trying to explain a little bit more about what gentrification is. So gentrification is restoring or upgrading a rundown urban, so city houses, by people who want to improve those places. And so it might mean making an old block of rundown flats or an old rundown building into some flash apartments. And the purpose of that is because those places are available for low prices. But in Chicago, what's happened, as we'll see, is the gentrification is really clear that a lot of the gentrification has happened in the north, so in upper class areas. And over on the south side, we've still got areas that have had a very minimal gentrification. And part of that is a little bit around the idea of the redlining, is that certain places in Chicago, certainly in the poor south of the city, areas there, and people were not able to access mortgages and loans to be able to buy their property. So gentrification's happened here. What that means typically is houses are done up, they're modernized. Gentrification might also mean that because of that, new street lighting, better parking, or CCTV will be put into those places. As a result of that, the gentrification leads to what we call displacement, because as places are gentrified and become better to live in and nicer to live in, people can charge more money to live in them. And as a result of that, the rental properties and the house prices increase. And as rents increase, the poorer people living in those areas can no longer live in those areas. So they have to move, just leaving the more affluent upper middle class people in those areas. And as a result of that, the poorer people in Chicago have moved from northern areas, and they've had to move into poorer areas in the south, where there's been less gentrification. So they're less appealing properties, which offer lower rents, which makes it easier and cheaper to live in. But essentially, you're filling that area up with the poorest people, least affluent, the lowest level of income, and the areas are not nice to live in. Coupled with the idea that in these areas where people have not a lot of money and poor job opportunities, the areas that are not gentrified encourage gangs who are able to prey on the fact that people living in those areas need to make an income. So, in the form of drug trafficking and selling drugs and crime. So these areas become what we call sink communities. They go in a downward spiral. Poorer people live in them. Poorer people are moving to them. Lower income, unable to own their own houses, unable to be able to spend money on them. They have the lowest, the areas there where they get the lowest amount of rents and taxes from these houses in these areas mean that the schools are funded, have the poorest amount of funding, which means the schools are poorer, which means the educational opportunities are worse, which means that young people especially, might be more attracted to gang culture and opportunities presented through there because they're not getting the opportunities through education. However, the opposite is the fact up here. We've got places that haven't been redlined. We've got people that are able to buy their own properties that have been done up. Richer, more affluent people are able to move to these areas. They become more desirable. Poorer people are moving out. The rental properties and house prices go up. And as a result of that, the revenues from taxes go up in those suburbs and those areas. So the schools in those areas are able to get more money. Therefore, the schools become more desirable, and therefore it becomes more desirable to live in. And so it continues. That's what we call an upward spiral happening here because of gentrification, and a downward spiral happening here.